Hey everyone, John Lorden here. Welcome to another episode of BrainScratch Searchlight, this one being recorded for January 31st, 2018. This is a really interesting case because we have some detail. We don't have a whole lot of detail, but what I find kind of interesting is what the law enforcement is not necessarily telling us. Have I got your interest piqued? Let's go ahead and start with the case of Abby Lynn Patterson. We're going to start with the missing poster over here. Before I get to reading on this, just please note she has a very distinguishing birthmark on the back of her leg. When her leg's up like this, it almost kind of looks like it's shaped like a heart. And apparently she also has a tattoo of a bird on her shoulder. But let's go ahead and get the details of what's going on with this case. Abby Lynn Patterson, age 20, was last seen on East 9th Street in the city of Lumberton in Robeson County, North Carolina at 11:30 a.m. on Tuesday, September 5th, 2017. She told her mother she'd be back in an hour, but she never returned. When she called Abby's phone, it went straight to voicemail. Abby is 5'7" tall, weighs 140 pounds, has long brown hair, brown eyes, a bird tattoo on her shoulder, and a dark birthmark on the back of her left thigh. She was last seen wearing a white shirt and brown shorts. Abby recently returned to Lumberton after living in Jacksonville, Florida for 2 years. And of course, they have contact information. I will have that in the description box below as well. And her living in Florida, there's some circumstances around that, may or may not be related to this case. We'll certainly get into the details on that. Let's learn just a little bit more about Lumberton really quick from Wikipedia. Lumberton, North Carolina is a city in Robeson County, North Carolina. The population has grown to 21,542 in the 2010 census from 20,795 in the 2000 census. So it seems like it grew a little bit between those 10 years, but according to their current estimates, it looks like it's shrinking again. Some of the information that I've been reviewing on this case, there's people that live either in or near this area. They're talking about that It did well for a period of time. There was many big businesses in there. Downtown was really thriving. Some of the big businesses pulled out. Downtown isn't quite as nice as it used to be. There appears to be a bit of a drug epidemic going on in this area as well. Some known prostitution is happening in this area, particularly close to the streets that Abby was last seen on. And there's kind of an interesting side effect going on with the coverage on this case. There's several major media sources that are reporting on this case, but they keep lumping Abby's case in with 3 murders that have happened in this area, very close to the neighborhood where she was last seen. We'll talk more about that as we get into the details there, but let's start with NamUs. I really want to try to focus on Abby's case in particular for this video, but we will touch on the cases that are seemingly being attached to this, which I don't necessarily agree with. But NamUs, Abby Lynn Patterson, last seen September 5th, 2017, about 11:30 a.m., and she's 20 years old, white, female. They have her at 5'7", 140 pounds, all the same information that we got pretty much from the poster. Lumberton is the last city she was seen in. Last seen walking down 9th Street towards Englewood Avenue in Lumberton, North Carolina. Now, one of the things that's interesting about that is she was seen getting into a vehicle, and we actually will get the details of the vehicle here. It's just noting, once again, her hair color is brown, her eyes are brown, birthmark on the left back thigh, bird tattoo on her shoulder, nothing else. They don't even have piercings listed in here, so nothing else in terms of identifiable marks on her body. Clothing and accessories, once again, white shirt, brown shorts, unknown footwear, no jewelry, no eyewear, no accessories. But transportation methods, here we get to a Buick Park Avenue sedan that is brown. Beige lettering of the word Buick down both sides of the vehicle. They don't have a year on this. The thing that's kind of interesting about this is, according to some information we're going to see, it seems like the police have already tracked this car down and they've already spoken to the driver. So the information that we're seeing here in NamUs talking about the last time she was seen walking down a street, not quite the right information as opposed to what we hear from police. So she was actually seen after that. We know that they've interviewed someone that supposedly drove her somewhere. That's one of those weird questions about this case that we're going to get into a little bit more by the end of the video. Jumping over to CBSnews.com, we have a picture of her here. Police say Abby Patterson was last seen on September 5th getting into a brown Buick near East 9th Street. Captain Terry Parker of the Lumberton Police told CBS News Crimesider that investigators do not think that Patterson's disappearance is related to the deaths of Megan Ann Oxendine, 28, Christina Bennett, 32, and Rhonda Jones, 36, who were all found dead in an area between East 5th and East 9th Streets. Now, I know that there is a natural inclination where when we're reviewing something like this and you hear that other things are happening in that area, I think just the way our brains work, we want to associate those things together so we can find the one explanation that's responsible and then say, you know, case cracked, we've got it, it's solved. The trouble I'm having here is we're going to get some more details about these deaths and kind of how they're categorized, which doesn't actually seem to include Abby. But outside of that, what we're talking about with these particular deaths are bodies that have been found in this area. And what we're talking about with Abby's case is her going missing from this area. And I can tell you that the way that these bodies were found, the person that did this, if it's one person that did this to these three ladies, was not trying to hide them. You had one of them found behind a house, one of them found in a house, one of them found in a trash can. So just in terms of looking at this and trying to say, you know, is this related? Did someone do something to Abby? Is it the same person that did this here? I really struggle with it right off the bat because we're talking about completely different situations. We're talking about someone using this area as kind of a dump site, or someone taking someone from this area somewhere else and doing something different. And that's kind of where I struggle with, are these cases really related? Now, outside of that, of course, here we have, you know, a captain basically telling us investigators don't think that these cases are related. Unfortunately, at least for BrainScratch fans, we're coming off of hearing investigators talk about that in the Cabbagetown Andrew Kinsman case that has just been breaking over the past few weeks. And we now know that despite the fact that they were saying they didn't think the disappearances were related, they were related. And it does seem like there was a serial killer working in that area. Now, just to give you guys just a little bit of an update in case you don't follow me on Twitter, in that case, Bruce MacArthur, we know he was working as a landscaper. Police have now said that they have found the remains of 3 individuals. I don't think they've identified those remains yet. So we do have a little bit of an update in that Andrew Kinsman case, but not much more. And they were found in planters. So they want anyone that may have hired Bruce to contact them basically so they can come out and check and make sure that there aren't further remains out there. Sorry, just a little sidetrack, but I wanted to make sure you guys knew that case is still moving forward. And just in tone with this case, I think it could be kind of related because it's possible here that we're seeing other things, in particular from the FBI, where maybe they are actually investigating these things a bit closer and is possibly related. But the straight word from the police is that they're saying they don't think that Abby Lynn's disappearance is related to those 3 murders. We aren't sure if the 3 women's deaths are related, but we are considering it, Parker said in June. And I haven't really dove into those cases a whole lot, but just from the details that I saw while researching this case, which was a lot, and that's one of those things I struggle with because anytime you start talking about these other cases, we're losing focus on Abby. It's happening right here in this video as well because of this conversation being like this. But I think there's a high likelihood that those cases are related to each other. I think there is a much less likelihood. It's possible. I can't rule it out. But just in terms of what we're talking about bodies being found in this location. We're talking about someone being apparently taken away from this location. Those are kind of 2 pretty different things in my mind, but we'll see. Parker said that before she disappeared, Patterson had been discharged from drug rehab and came to town to visit her mom. He said she called an acquaintance to pick her up and has not been heard from since. So there is a little twist in this story. From what I understand, it was an opioid addiction, likely heroin, that she was struggling with. But apparently she was discharged from rehab. We don't know, was it a good thing? Like, did she complete the program? Did she quit on it and get out? I don't know. But she came out here, was visiting her mom. I think she was only out there for a matter of a few days before she disappeared. So, of course, one of the theories you have to consider when looking at this case is, did she possibly relapse? Was she looking to score and just, can't face her mother, so she's on the run, essentially? Another possibility that people have talked about, particularly on web sleuths, is could she have overdosed if she was trying to use the same amount that she was used to, which I guess does happen occasionally for addicts after they've been clean for a period of time. They kind of fall back on a relapse and then they don't know that their body has adjusted and they use too much. Kind of a dark outcome to think of. I hope at this point she's alive somewhere and maybe has left of her own accord. But with the period of time that's passed, this is getting pretty critical here. There might be something else at play, and that's really part of why I wanted to cover this today. Let's continue moving on to actionnewsjax.com, see if we can get some more detail from her mother. Her mother, Samantha Lovett, told CBS North Carolina that she got a text from her daughter on that day saying she'd be gone an hour. Neighbors saw Patterson get into a brown Buick down the street from her home. And now we're going to get pretty much the only tidbit that police have released about the person that picked her up in the Buick, because they have found this guy. They have interviewed him. Police described the person in the car as an acquaintance. And that's pretty much all the information they're giving us about that. Of course, I've talked about it, particularly in Blaze's case that we covered over the past few weeks. The person that is last seen with a missing person, they have to be looked at very deeply. And I think there might be some of that going on here, because what we're not hearing in this case is what that person has said. Interestingly, in Blaze's case, police were pretty open with the media about what his friends said about where they had gone, about that they had gone to the park. But in this case, we're not getting that at all. We're just getting, yep, police have interviewed the guy. They don't want to release who he is. All they're saying is that, yeah, he basically knew her. But that tells me that they might not necessarily be trusting his information, because if they trusted his information, that should change the last time that she was seen. And they have the only location information we're talking about here is where she was picked up over on 9th Street. Well, this guy would probably be able to tell us where he took her and where he dropped her off. So shouldn't that be the last known location that we're talking about and that we're searching for? So I'm really kind of struggling with that. And I think just the way that they're keeping tight-lipped about this person, that they're probably looking at him a bit more in depth than they're letting on to the media. Jumping over to WNCN.com, CBS North Carolina. A 20-year-old who disappeared from Lumberton last month had returned home from rehab just a few days before she vanished. The driver told police that Patterson was dropped off at another location. Police declined to say where it was. So once again, we're getting practically no information from the authorities. At least it seems to me that they are not trusting the information from this person. Otherwise, that location would be talked about. Last known location is very important in these missing persons cases. Outside of that, we're not getting any details in terms of why this person was giving her a ride. Was she going to a store? Was she going to meet someone else? We have none of those details, which once again could be key into an investigation like this. And that's exactly what I was saying at the start of this episode. The things that police aren't telling us are kind of, at least for me, they're leading me to certain conclusions about this case. I don't I don't know if we can rely on that a whole lot either. It's a really strange place to be in for a missing persons case. She had been in rehab in Florida for heroin addiction. Her mother said Patterson last lived in Lumberton about 3 years ago. From what I understand, she went to high school out there. She still had a bunch of friends out there that were at least following her on Facebook. Talked a little bit about her addiction on Facebook. And it's strange because in one way, she was celebrating her months of sobriety, and that seemed to stop at some point on Facebook. She didn't note what should have been the 1-year anniversary of her being sober and some things like that. So by some indications, I think it's possible that we're looking at some type of relapse situation here, but that's certainly not the only thing. I mean, we've got an attractive young woman. Who knows what could have happened out there? She could have been picked up by someone. Is this potentially a trafficking situation of some kind? We really don't know at this point. Jumping over to foxnews.com. So initially they were offering a $5,000 reward. As of November 3rd, that actually got upped. A $10,000 reward is being offered. A local chicken processing facility is adding $5,000 to the reward money already being offered by the woman's family. Patterson's sister, Sandy Bryan, told the newspaper, "We know she's not out there by choice," Bryan said. "She talks to my mom every day, and we haven't heard from her since." Really, really tough. It's a bright spot in this story to hear about businesses that are doing something like this, essentially doubling the reward. That's something I always appreciate when I'm looking at cases like this, when others are helping the families of missing loved ones like that. So I just wanted to kind of call that out. Over at abc11.com on November 16th, 2017, we see that the FBI has joined the search for missing Lumberton woman. I don't see that happen too often in these missing persons cases unless they think that she might have been taken across state lines. That's typically where the FBI will say this is entering federal jurisdiction and they will kick in. I've seen many cases where local law enforcement might ask for the FBI to help with some particular aspect of a case or something like that, but I don't think that's exactly what we have going on here. As a matter of fact, the FBI has even kicked up their own page specifically on Abby. They're not mentioning the murders of the other 3 women on this particular page. However, they do have that case also rolling, and they are offering a $30,000 reward in that case, kind of on a separate track. So what I'm wondering is that part of their interest in this case? Is this really saying that the FBI thinks that it's possible that Abby might be related to those 3 other cases? They don't want to treat it like that on their website. They want to give each case its own due. But is that possibly why they're hosting information about both of these cases? Details. The Charlotte Division of the FBI and the Lumberton Police Department in North Carolina are seeking assistance from the public to locate Abby Lynn Patterson. She left her home on East 9th Street in Lumberton, North Carolina, and was seen getting into a brown Buick. Once again, just very strange to me that we're talking about that as the last time that she's seen, when we know that the guy that drove her away has been interviewed. We know the police are at least aware of where he said he took her, but that information is not being shared with us at all. I don't know. I really haven't quite seen one like this before. In the links below, I'll also have a link to the Web Sleuth thread about this. It's only about 10 pages. But once again, it shows the same problem that I had in this video. So many of these articles have clubbed together these murder cases with this specific case that ultimately you kind of start talking about the possibility of this boogeyman that may or may not exist. And the focus kind of gets pulled away from Abby when that happens time and time again. So before we go here, let me just pull up the screenshot. Please take a good look at these. If you've seen Abby somewhere, please use the contact information in the description box below. Let's see if we can help bring her home, at least get a message to her family that, she's fine, even if she doesn't want to be found. Abby, if you are out there, you can just speak to a police officer. You can go into police department if you want and just tell them that, I think my family's looking for me, but I don't want to be found. That message can get relayed back to them. They don't have to know where the message came from. It's just one of those cases that's really tough because we have a young woman that has been struggling, trying to clean up her life. I talk about this on this channel a lot. Life is a certain number of chances, and I'm hopeful in this case that Abby can be found, that she can be given many more chances to continue improving her life into the future. Outside of that, other theories that are going on here, I think I've touched on most of them already in this video, but possible relapse, possibly she ran away on her own, possibly something went bad if she did relapse. Outside of that, potential trafficking situation, possibly. We have to talk about that in these cases as well, especially when the area, we at least know that there is prostitution going on in that area. I don't think I really got to it, but that is the main classification of the 3 murdered women is they were known to be essentially working the street, I think is how the police officially put it. I don't know if they'd wanted to come straight out and say that they were prostitutes, but that's kind of the assumption about them. Some people seem to ignore that part of the story and say, well, wait, no, they were drug users. They were 3 drug users. Abby's a drug user. That means these cases are all related. I don't know. We're talking about very different situations from my point of view. This isn't a trend that we're seeing where Abby fits into this particular trend outside of there's some bad things that seem to be happening in that neighborhood. Does that mean that every bad thing in that neighborhood that we can tie it all up and wrap it all up in one kind of super boogeyman theory? I really don't think that's fair to really researching these cases and trying to understand these things. But in some cases, like we talked about in Cabbagetown, there is a boogeyman. It does happen. All right, Brain Scratchers, this is where I turn it over to you. Let's talk about this in the comments below. I ask we please be respectful to this topic. My point of view on this, because people use drugs, because they are prostitutes, whatever, we don't give up on them. We want to bring them home. We want to give them every chance we can at improving their lives in whatever way they can. So please be respectful and do keep in mind, it's very likely that some member of Abby's family is going to see this video and read through those comments. We have seen that happen more and more often over the past year in particular. So take care, everyone. Thank you for joining me on this episode. Come back tomorrow and we'll have more for you here on the Lord and Arts channel.